And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by James. And James writes, "Hi, John. I just recently seen that both Shang-Chi and the Eternals may not be approved for release in China. This is due to potential stereotypes in Shang-Chi and a negative reaction to, and a negative reaction to comments from Chloé Zhao. How do you think this will affect Marvel Studios long term, as China is a huge market, even if they only receive around 25% of the box office?" Okay, thanks a lot for sending that in, James. And yes, listen, we have known for a while that, let's back up even a little bit more. Every year, China only allows a set limited number of American films to open in China. It's not like other countries in the world where, oh yeah, if you make a movie in America, you can play in any country you want. You can play it anywhere you want. China has more of a more controlled environment than that. They have rules where only X number of films every year from America are even allowed to play there. That, by definition, means the vast majority of movies that get produced every year do not get to play in China. That's just default, all right? So you have a chance of getting your American-made film in China, but if the spots fill up or whatever their reasons are, the likelihood is if you make a movie in America, it will not get to play in China. All right. That's just the default. But some every year do. Some do. Obviously, being the second biggest movie market in the world, Marvel is very keen on having their films, which are big, big box office movies, to play in China. Now, granted, China being the second biggest box office market in the world is mitigated by the fact, whereas in North America, the studios get to keep about 2/3 of the box office that gets made. In China, if I understand it properly, studios only get to keep about 25% of the box office. So yes, it's the second biggest box office market in the world, but the amount of box office that the studio gets to keep out of China is drastically smaller than it is in other countries around the world. So it mitigates itself a little bit, right? Anyway, a couple of films that have really been on the radar as far as us movie fans go and talking about what are their chances of getting into China are two of Marvel's upcoming films. One is The Eternals and one is Shang-Chi, starring Simu Liu, who was born in China, but is a good Canadian kid, by the way. One of the stars of Kim's Convenience. I love that show. Good Canadian show. Anyway, I can get sidetracked on that for a while. Now, with the Eternals thing, the problem has been more obvious. Director Chloé Zhao, who is the reigning, defending best director in the world. She won best director. She was anointed, I should say, best director in the world this year by the Directors Guild of America and by the Academy. She won best director at those, and her film Nomadland, which is amazing, won best picture at the Asterix Academy Awards this year. Anyway, Chloé Zhao, who's Chinese, made some really harsh comments. Whether they were deserved or not, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But she has spoken very critically of China and the Chinese government and things like that, which did put things, put a giant question mark over whether or not her movie Eternals was going to be able to play in China. As a matter of fact, they pretty much wiped out any news coverage of her win at the Academy Awards. They pretty much censored out any news of that in China. They didn't even let anybody in China talk about it, the fact that she won. So now, granted, she's not in the movie, right? It's not like if people go to watch Eternals in China that they will see Chloé Zhao. You're not going to see her. She's the director of the film, but still, that has cast a very, very big doubt over whether or not an Eternals was ever going to get to play there. But there's another film, which is Shang-Chi. And It's like, well, wait a minute. Did anybody talk badly about China? Is that the problem here? The problem with this one, it seems to be more of a perception problem. There is a perception problem that they are guessing that China and the Chinese people are not going to be portrayed in a favorable way. As a matter of fact, they're even writing about it on their local social media. This comes to us from Variety, who writes, this week, many Weibo users echoed this sentiment. So, you change the name and it's not Fu Manchu anymore. The Mandarin is inherently a character that blackens the image of the Chinese people, one viewer wrote. I hope China Film and the censorship authorities won't be bought out by this. This kind of film is not worthy of coming to China to make money off of us while calling us fools. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about that I want to just give some of my own personal commentary on. All right. First of all, I find everybody is very sensitive when it comes to portrayal of whatever their heritage background is, right? Like, I'll speak as an Italian. I'm a little confounded sometimes because whenever inevitably there is a villain in a movie or a show, or a mobster in a movie or a show that is portrayed as being Italian, I see a bunch of my fellow Italians get their knickers in a twist and going, you're negatively stereotyping Italians. And I'm like, no, wait a minute, time out. The hero in that movie or TV show was also Italian. The good people of the town in that thing were also Italian. And yes, a bad guy happened to be Italian. They were not saying inherently all Italians are mobsters and criminals and villains. But a lot of Italians, Canadians get sensitive. You know, they didn't portray Canadians in the right way, and Canadians get sensitive. Oh, don't even get me started with Americans. Americans do this, so don't go pointing at other guys. Americans do this as badly as anybody else. What is that movie saying? Americans are bad? No, they're just saying that the bad guy in this movie happened to be American, but you know, the heroes were also American. And I find that, and true, it looks like China and Chinese people are not immune to that. Chinese people are not immune to that either. It's like, yeah, okay, the villain, the Mandarin, is the bad guy, but so is the hero. So I mean, I don't know. But there seems to be some kind of concern in China about the portrayal of China and the Chinese culture and Chinese people and stuff like that. And what I really don't understand, and this is true of Italians, Canadians, Americans, Jamaicans, anybody, is people getting all upset and getting their gitch in a twist over a movie they haven't even seen yet. We do it all the time. And it seems like this is a really bad trait in movie fans, regardless if they're Canadian, American, Jamaican, or Chinese. We get all riled up over a movie we haven't even seen yet because of how we assume the movie is going to portray X person or X character or whatever. And it seems like, yeah, everybody gets wound up about that. And come on, admit it, guys. Everybody does that. We all get kind of wound up by things we think are going to be in a movie, whether or not we've seen the movie yet or not. We all do it. It's not a particularly attractive trait of us movie fans, but it is something that we do sometimes. Anyway, so that has brought up a question. Now, what has happened with this particular situation is that and I'm seeing some people, let's be clear about this. I'm seeing some people say things like, how do we put this? I'm seeing some people saying that, oh, you know, they, I want to make sure I word this right. But there are some outlets reporting, and there's some people online and on social media saying things like China has banned Eternals and Shang-Chi. And that is not the case. At least not yet. Here's what has happened. Now, this comes to us again from Variety, who writes, a recent Chinese state media report has added to the rumors that two major Marvel superhero films, Eternals and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, may not be approved. May may not be approved for release in China. In a report on the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4 films, the CCTV6 China Movie Channel aired a list of the US release dates for 8 of the 10 scheduled titles, but conspicuously left out Eternals and Shang-Chi after Black Widow, which hits in the US on July 9th, and they are the next 2 MCU films lined up releasing in North America on September 3rd and on November 5th, respectively. So basically what's happened is that this Chinese outlet has reported 8 of the 10 spots, but they did not mention Eternals or Shang-Chi. Which means they still could. They still could. And now look, China is its own country. They can decide what they want to play in their country and what they don't. There's all that. And again, it's important to understand this. China only lets certain number of films in their country every year that come from the US. So if they don't let in Shang-Chi or if they don't let in Eternals, I suppose we shouldn't really be all that completely surprised. The question is, though, how concerned and how wrapped up should Disney be about this? Should Disney devote a lot of worry and a lot of concern and a lot of effort about getting their films in the Chinese market? Films like Eternals. Should they worry about it too terribly much? On the one hand, and I know everybody likes to draw a line in the sand, but let's try to take a step back and look at it from both sides for a second. All right, everybody take a deep breath and let's proceed here. Disney is a business. And you're not in business for fun. You're in business to make money. And you make decisions to reach as big of a market as you can, to make as much money as you can for your products. That's what businesses do. China does represent a big, potentially big part of the pie, even though they keep most of it. But China does represent a lot of potential consumers. There is a lot of potential to make big money out of China, as they and other studios have done in the past. So, should Disney care if their films get played in China? You're an idiot if you don't think that they should care. Of course they should care. You have zero business acumen if you don't believe for a second that Disney should care if their products have access to a massive marketplace like China. Of course they should care, and of course that should be a part of their thinking process. You're just no good at business if you don't agree. But how much should they care? To what degree should they be willing to go to get access to that market? That's the gray area. This is where it becomes a discussion, because I think most people are intelligent enough to know that, well, of course, Disney and any studio should want their products in the Chinese marketplace. It's a huge market. There's a lot of money to be made. You're a fool if you don't think so. Most people agree with that. Most people also agree you shouldn't be willing to step over the corpse of your dead mother just to do something that you want to do. So there's the two extremes. You don't do anything to acquiesce to China's demands, but you don't just ignore the Chinese marketplace at the same time. So the question is, where in between these two extremes, how far in between those two extremes should Disney be willing to go? Should they be willing to remove Chloé Zhao as the director of Eternals? Well, on the one hand, that would fix the problem for China. I think China would instantly go, okay, yep, it's cool. You take that little problem out, that little Chloé Zhao problem out, and we got a deal. Here's the problem, though. Disney's not willing to do that. nor should they be willing to do that. As a matter of fact, even if Disney wanted to do that, they wouldn't be allowed to do that because it would violate all sorts of contracts and the collective bargaining agreement with the Directors Guild of America. Chloé Zhao directed the movie. You can't remove her. It's just that simple. You can't. But I don't think Disney would be willing to either. As a matter of fact, Disney has even been going off on a lot of their talking points. We've been hearing Kevin Feige talking lately about Chloé Zhao, Chloé Zhao, Chloé Zhao, Chloé Zhao. Like, Disney's not even trying to downplay the Chloé Zhao part. They're going off shouting it. Chloé Zhao, Director of the Year, Best Picture winner. Chloé Zhao, Chloé Zhao, Chloé Zhao. Right? The only thing that Kevin Feige isn't doing is walking around with a big Chloé Zhao face on his shirt, right? But they're clearly not backing away from Chloé Zhao, and nor should they. I think we all agree they shouldn't be willing to do that. And really, as far as Eternals go, and maybe you guys agree or disagree with me on this, as far as Eternals go, I don't think there's anything that will make China happy regarding Eternals short of Chloé Zhao not being associated with it, or having Chloé Zhao coming out and make a statement renouncing everything she said before about China. But she ain't going to do that, and I don't think Disney's going to ask her to do that. So I think Eternals is a lost cause. I'll tell you that right now. I think Eternals is a lost cause. Because there's not even anything that Disney could do about Eternals to make the Chinese authorities happy with it. The only thing that could be done, and I don't think Disney's willing to even try to do it, is to get rid of Chloé Zhao or make her renounce her statements. And I don't think Disney's wanting to do either of those things. So that's off the table. All right, well, what about Shang-Chi? Shang-Chi could be a different situation. It could be. Because it doesn't seem like there's any individual that they're worried about on Shang-Chi, as far as I can tell. It's not like they have a big problem with Simu Liu. So, and nor should they have a problem with Simu Liu. It doesn't seem like they have a particular problem or issue with the director involved. It seems to have to do with what their perception is and what their guesses are as to how Chinese individuals and maybe Chinese culture are going to be portrayed in the film. Okay, if Eternals is a lost cause, Shang-Chi, there could be some wiggle room, right? And I think, and I know there are going to be hardliners that disagree with me, but I think if there is reasonable compromise to be made with, marginally to unimportant aspects of your movie, then you make those things. If there are things that they want you to change that fundamentally change your film, you say, no, thank you, and you walk out the door. But if there's something that can be done that doesn't really affect the integrity of your film, do it. So I think if Eternals is a lost cause, I think there is room for Shang-Chi to have like Disney reps go to China, sit down with their, with their censorship board and say, okay, here's our film. Tell us we stand behind our film. We're confident in it. Sit down, here it is, take a look at it, and tell us any of your concerns. And if there's any concerns that you have that we can address, we're open to discussing it. Whether it's however a certain character is portrayed or whatever, it's never bad to listen. It's never bad to listen. And then, after listening, if you feel like, you know what, we could make these little changes and it wouldn't affect our film at all, but it will make them happy and it will give us access to the second largest movie market in the world. Then from a business point of view, you do it. However, if it's like, okay, they came back and they wanted us to change the villain they wanted us to green screen out the Mandarin and have the villain be Uncle Sam. And it's this big American guy with a giant USA hat on his head. And it's a character we've never heard of. And it's Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam American Joe is his name. And they want us to do that. Well, if it's fundamentally changing your movie, then you say, hey, you know what? Thanks for taking the time to talk to us, but we're going to keep our movie as it is. Thank you very much. The key is see if there's some middle ground you can find that doesn't affect the integrity of your movie, but that does open up the market to you. And if it doesn't, then you turn around and you walk out the door. It's just about where is that line? Where is that line? And I'm not sure because I'm not in those rooms. I'm not in the strategy room at Disney trying to figure this thing out. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But listen, what I do know is 2 facts. And all I can tell you is that I know these 2 things for fact. Fact number 1, Disney would like Eternals and Shang-Chi to play in China. Fact number 2, they're totally fine not having it in China if it can't be done. They're totally fine and they're totally comfortable with it not playing in China if, a reasonable agreement can't be made to let them play in China, which would be in everybody's best interests. But if they can't make that deal, they're perfectly fine not playing in China either. The question is going to be, and maybe we'll never know what the answers are, is where is that line? Where is that line? And I don't know. I don't think the answer is either the extremes, but then where in the middle is it? And there's 1,000 different possibilities for that. Anyway, question is for you guys. What do you think about this whole scenario going on with Eternals and Shang-Chi? And listen, they still said there are 2 spots. Maybe those 2 spots could be for Eternals and Shang-Chi. Maybe China's just doing a little bit of saber rattling. And maybe they're ultimately going to let the movies play anyway. Maybe they're not. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Question is, guys, what do you think about this? How do you think this is all going to resolve? Should it resolve at all? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys.